Hello and welcome to the cheeriest episode of the Seeing Red podcast you will ever see, as Arsenal fall to a 3-2 defeat at home at the Emirates against Manchester United. Arsenal's first home defeat in all competitions this season, and a game which, of course, labels questions very much at Arsenal's title credentials and whether or not they will go on to win it or whether they will bottle it once again. We will see. Hopefully not, but we're going to be here all the way, and I'm joined, as always, by the chief football writer at the Mirror, Mr. John Cross. How you doing, mate? You good, Joel?
Yeah, not bad.
Are you good and well?
Yeah. You got any jokes, Tom? Cheering the mood, change the mood.
Arsenal Football Club at the moment.
No. Yeah, it was a brutal day, wasn't it? Really brutal day, and we'll dissect it, obviously. But my God, what a flat experience in the stadium. United's you contrast that with United's energy, the Carrick feel-good factor. Wow. Yeah. There's lots to get through today.
There is.
Yeah.
We're going to try and get through as much of it as we can because there's a lot of stuff on and off the field that I think we need to talk about as well, and regarding the manager and stuff. It's one of those games, and I've talked about it already in some other places, and I said it's not really one of those games where I feel like I can sit through and go, this is what happened in the 10th minute, and this is the goal, and this is because I think the whole game in itself is something worthy of discussion more broadly. Before the game, as you know, I was quite confident, going into this game. And I did feel that Arsenal would be better than them. And I think Arsenal are better than them. And I thought that game against Man United was maybe a bit more of a flash in the pan. Man City, was a bit of a flash in the pan for United. Great performance. Certainly the shackles have kind of come off that team under Carrick, and they are looking a really good side. But when I reflect on the game, having slept on things, I look back and go, we gifted them a goal. They scored two absolute worldies. The two scrappy goals that Arsenal scored, it's one of those games that could have dropped either way once again. But the performance and the effort and the efficiency and the accuracy and the nerves and all of those different factors have kind of combined to make this a really big story. So let me just get your thoughts on the game overall.
Yeah, I always think football is a really simple game, actually. A ball, round leather thing, sort of 22 players in the middle. And I must say, I'm a great believer in setting that tone in the first almost 5 minutes. I still think it's very, very simplistic, but a lot of the time you can tell how that's going to go. And I just thought, United started quite well. Arsenal looked a bit edgy, and it almost set a tone. I thought Arsenal were the better team for the majority of the first half, in fairness to them. So it'd be wrong to say, that it wasn't. It was all one-way traffic. But by the end, I did feel United were deserved winners. I have to say, I thought it was a really good, accomplished, strong, defiant away performance, and I think you have to give them credit for that. Be churlish not to. But equally, where I felt it really changed was, Zubimendi has to score. I think, by the way, with the header that forces a good save from the men's.
Yeah.
And basically, at that point, you think, okay, 1-0. It should be 1-0 up. And then Timber, I thought, I cannot for the life of me understand why it's given to Martin. I can't understand it. It's an own goal. But you think Arsenal, okay, they've done the hard bit, because I felt I took that in that first 5 minutes was, it's going to be laboured today. It didn't feel to me it was free-flowing. And, it didn't roll nicely. It felt to me against Inter Milan that it was a nice free-flowing. They were playing with some freedom and enjoyment and confidence. Against United, you could pick up very early that there was a nervousness about it. They go 1-0 up, and even before Zubimendi's error, they have gifted two big openings for United by sloppiness, clumsiness. I think, it was a little bit of a mistake, misunderstanding. Saliba, kind of goes to sleep, and then sort of kind of, there's another sort of opening, isn't there? Even before the Zubimendi mistake, and basically which it lets in Mbeumo, and basically, so I think there was a nervousness and a tension which was definitely echoed in the stadium. And I think as soon as United equalised, you think, oh God, where's this going to go? And what really worried me, and I know I've banged on about this a lot, is that basically when Zubimendi makes that mistake, I just feel, come on, the stadium, get behind the team again. But the stadium is actually, beset by nerves and tension. Yeah. And those jitters really spread. Even though at half-time I felt as if Arsenal could go and win the game. Easy. Yeah. really did. And then Dorgu, who's played, who's gone from United flop to playing like Cafu, scores an absolute belter. And then I just thought at 84 minutes when Merino equalises, just take 2-2, easy, because Arsenal haven't played well. To come away with a point and 2-2 draw, I think would have actually, on balance, been a good result and good turn. Because you'd still go 5 points clear, maintain a lead at the top, and yet what do? It's a kind of Madueke runs it into touch, and then basically, which was an error, and then Cunha scores an absolute belter, which United go mad. There's no way back from there, and basically because it's so late on, I thought it was a deeply frustrating afternoon for Arsenal, and I have to say, in amongst those nerves and jitters, it immediately raises the question mark. They're not going to do it again, are they? They can't blow it from here, can they? And that is the biggest obstacle, I think, facing Arsenal. It's not necessarily an opponent, it's themselves.
It's that, and you've probably seen it. It's the meme of the guy with holding the iron bar, and the guy holding the iron bar is labelled Arsenal. The guy is about to hit with the iron bar is labelled Arsenal, and the iron bar is labelled Arsenal, because that does feel like what it's going to be. Right. And it feels like very much Arsenal are the biggest thing that are going to stop themselves from that can stop Arsenal from winning this title. I found, it's probably, I think, we go to these games from a journalistic point of view to work, to write, to be there, to comment on the game, to do our job. It's probably one of the toughest games in this, for me, junior career that I found working at. Beset by anger in a way at the performance. And you put it still to one side and you crack on, you do what you need to do. But it definitely, I think, bled into certainly the player ratings that I was doing and writing at the time, and just getting incredibly frustrated, I think, with the lack of calmness and experience that was on show from players that have, been here, that are experienced, that are Premier League, are on the way potentially to becoming one of the best in their position in the Premier League scene. Players like Declan Rice, players like William Saliba, a player that's new to this team that I adore, like Zubimendi, and some of the poor mistakes that are being made by those players. And I think the fact that Arsenal, so much of this season, have been able to rely on their defence and lean on the likes of Saliba and Gabriel on the defensive line and Raya to an extent. And now they're shipping 3 goals. No, 2 of them were absolute wonders. And I know the first one came from a mistake. That's the first time in, I think it's 126 games that Arsenal have conceded 3 goals in a fixture. Yeah. And it comes from conceding 2 at Chelsea in the League Cup and, conceding at Inter in the week, even though we've won these games, conceding at Portsmouth as well. We're conceding on a relatively regular occasion. At the start of the season, it was all, Arsenal are going to keep the longest record of clean sheets ever, and set records that have stood for more than 100 years. But now we're lucky if we can keep a clean sheet, and it's just this kind of tip of momentum all of a sudden. And Arsenal have historically gone through these kind of periods during the winter schedule. Even that season in 23-24, when we managed to get the most goals we've scored, I think, in the Premier League era, more than the Invincibles managed to do. There was that dip that we had around New Year's where they lost to Fulham and they lost to West Ham. Sam Dean put the stats out about it. He said 21-22, 5 games without a win in January. 22-23, 4 games without a win in January or February. 23-24, 1 win in 7 games in December, January. And last season, 1 win in 5 games in January. There's just something about this month, John, that sticks out and Arsenal struggle with.
Yeah, do you know what? Back in the day, in the Wenger era, I shouldn't go on about that too much. It used to be November. Honestly, they'd have a curse, and then every year they'd have a meltdown. What is that? What is that saying to me? Because I noticed that tweet from Sam as well. Yeah, and that to me, right, says, I know it's obvious, right, but basically there's a pattern there. And then if you really dissect it and think about it, what is that saying to me and to you? That to me says that the players at a certain point in the season are tired and fatigued and are feeling the pace, because that it's too much of a coincidence in my view. Why are we sort of kind of talking about that? I think we're talking about that because the crazy schedule over festive and New Year, which bleeds then into January and then kind of takes you into, this phase where it feels you're playing every 3 days. And I think that can be tiring physically and mentally for players. There's no doubt about it. Arsenal have been in that zone in those, seasons, haven't they?
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder whether it's, too much training, too much pressure, and feeling it. And I think that basically, you begin to wonder whether they need a bit more. I mean, listen, everyone wants a breather, right? But basically, is there too much, sort of kind of being placed on the shoulders of players, and, too much training, too much intensity in games? It's got to be a pattern, that, hopefully they can reset and go again. But I do feel as if there has to be something there. There's got to be a bit of soul searching, when you get periods of injuries on players. You've got to look deeper, I think, than basically sometimes than just, oh, it's a bit of bad luck. He's got a niggle. You never believe it. Oh, he's got something. Honestly, football, we can't place the emphasis, and rightly so, on the stats, as we do now in the modern game. Things like XG, and say, oh, okay, it was funny that it's a bit of a coincidence, or it's bad luck with injuries. No, I'm not having that. I just think we can't be analytical on the one side and then kind of rather dismissive on the next. I think there's a pattern there, and I think we kind of, need to look at that and think, oh, I wonder what's going on there.
Oh, sorry. Did you see there was a stat that came out as well? I know you said we can't really focus much on stats, but
no, I do. No, I absolutely do. No. I'm saying the opposite. Yeah. I actually think that we cannot. I put a great deal of emphasis and store in XG in the way that players, the way a team evolves. I haven't always been that of opinion, but I think that basically, as you realise and become to appreciate, I think actually, no, that I actually feel the opposite, that we really, you need to look at. By the way, someone was saying to me, I think what was United's XG from yesterday? 0.7?
Less than 1, 0.98, I think.
Right, okay, was it? I thought it was 0.7, but I got that wrong. But
to be fair, there's lots of different accounts that have their own version of XG, so you might be fair.
But I just think, my God,
3 goals
from less than 1 XG. That is crazy.
Yeah,
and I know people will say, well, that shows you why XG doesn't matter. No, that's not.
It shows you why it does. Yeah,
100%. Because basically within that, you've got 2 unbelievable worldies. Yeah, and basically that is over and above. And you are saying that there have to be exceptional goals to count. So I actually think it illustrates the point. Sorry. No.
I was just going to say. Sky put this graphic out which said that Saka 0 goals in his last 13 appearances, all competitions. Gyökeres 0 non-penalty goals in his last 11 Premier League appearances. Martinelli 0 goals in his last 13 Premier League appearances. Madueke 0 goals in his last 25 Premier League appearances. Trossard 1 goal in his last 11 appearances in all competitions. That's the Arsenal. That's the attack of the side that I tipped at the moment to be winning the league. That's. How much stock do you place in this idea that Arteta can get a lot from this side defensively, like what they can get at this team, how hard they are to beat? The fact that if you are going to score 3 goals, you've got to do it from an XG less than 1 that we've just been talking about. But when it comes to the offensive side, that is the output of this current team. And if we're being honest, I don't know if it's most, but a large portion of Arsenal's goals this season obviously have come from set pieces as well.
Well, an astonishing amount, isn't it, really? Because, I did tot it up yesterday. I've now forgotten it, but I wrote about it yesterday. But, I mean, it's the highest. And the lack of goal threat, I think, is staggering to me, because it really felt as if it was forced and laboured. What we're talking about 4 or 5 days on from Inter Milan, when it flowed and you've got goals. I do feel as if they had an opportunity in the summer. I know, it's a bit of an old sort of chestnut here, and I'm going to bang that drum again. But then basically they had an opportunity in the summer to go and strengthen and sign a striker, and basically look at how they could, strengthen that one big department, i.e. attack, and make it better. And I felt last season, I love Saka. I think he's amazing. So I think, I know he's not completely at his best right now. The stats bear that out. I do feel as if Trossard is so valuable to the squad, and he hasn't been at his best in a few weeks, I think, because I think that, he's so dynamic when he's at his best. He's terrific as a super sub, by the way. Makes a real difference. I'm sure he wouldn't want to do that. But I feel as if, they had an opportunity to strengthen centre forward, and we were all screaming for a left winger. And I feel like, they signed Eze.
Yeah.
And I know Eze, Tom, he wasn't signed particularly as a left wing. He was signed, I think, as a 10 who could play left. And I think that's also what he does for England. Well, I feel sorry for Eze because he was so good against games like Tottenham, against Bayern Munich, and then basically doesn't track Matty Cash at Aston Villa. And he's been punished. He's been benched ever since. I feel sorry for the bloke. I think he's fantastic. And it's just too much. And basically, it feels like Arteta has, binned him off and playing on the left because of that. Oh, come on. It's just
and also
one mistake. And I feel as if, I tell you what, it feels like Madueke giving the ball away and then kind of that, I wonder whether he's going to be on the naughty step for the next 2 months. And so, I do feel as if, though, going back to the point about the centre forward, I think Gyökeres, £64 million. It hasn't worked out, I've got to be honest. So finally, Arteta then plays Gabby Jesus and basically plays him up front. I didn't think he played well at all. I mean, he wasn't alone in that. I didn't think he was terrible.
To be fair, a lot of people have said this, and I do think that those first 30 minutes where Arsenal were on top and dominant and creating and dangerous and had a threat, he was heavily involved in a lot of what Arsenal were doing with that, as was Saka, as was Timber. But like everybody else after they scored, he trailed off. Everyone trailed off. Everyone fell away. Gyökeres came on and did nothing, when he came off the bench. And in fact, there were some moments that, again, it's hard work that gets appreciated, but I think there's too much stock being placed in just hard work, when it comes to him. But Jesus and Gyökeres, look, Jesus is not of the required level. Otherwise, we wouldn't have signed Victor Gyökeres, or Kai Havertz, or moved on from him. So we know Jesus is not the answer. We know that. Gyökeres is not proving to be the answer either by what we've seen so far this season. And so for me, and this is where, and I really want to bring up a certain player, because I only gave one player a 7 yesterday. Can you work out? I'll put the pressure on you a little bit. I'll tell you what, they didn't start the game.
Oh,
that's the clue I'll give you.
Well, okay. If you hadn't given me that clue, I would have seen Declan Rice, but someone actually berated me and said, "Oh, we didn't play that well." I thought he was all right in the first half, to be honest. But that's interesting. Eze?
No, it wasn't Eze. It was Mikel Merino.
Okay.
I gave a 7. So obviously he scored the goal.
But
I, for one, feel that Arsenal have looked best when Mikel Merino is playing in a forward position at the moment in the team. I think there's more threat about them. I think he is a threat. He consistently scores in big moments. He scored from last season, I think, against Real Madrid. He's scored at Anfield last season. He scored in the League Cup game the other day against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. He scored that equaliser at Newcastle earlier on in the season as well. He's just a threat in big games, and he pops up in big moments. He scored again yesterday against Manchester United.
If Leeds is tomorrow, Tom, basically, you obviously got a Champions League game in between. But if Leeds is tomorrow, do you start Merino? And the second part of that question is, if you do, where do you start him? Can you make a case for the false 9 or 9?
So if Leeds is tomorrow, I'd probably start him at centre forward, to be honest. However, the Kairat game is interesting for me because, and we'll maybe touch on it a little bit, or maybe it'll just weave into this conversation now, is that obviously Kai is this presence that is hopefully going to be back soon. I actually think that Mikel Merino can operate very well behind the striker and play instead of Martin Ødegaard as well, and play with Declan Rice and with Zubi. People say it's too cautious. There's not enough offence about it. But I think if you've got a player like Kai who drops in and also links play, and Merino can then push up and dovetail with him, I think it can work quite well. I think both of the 10s at the moment, Eze and Ødegaard, are just not producing in that position. And I think Merino needs to give him a chance. And if Gyökeres or Jesus was offering more, I'd say do that against Leeds, play Merino at 10. But because both of Gyökeres and Jesus are not delivering at the moment, even though Jesus did in midweek in Milan, but didn't in this league game and hasn't in the other league games recently either, I think I would go Merino. in that game. I'd probably still. It's difficult with Ødegaard, mate, because when he came back from injury, he got 3 goal contributions in 3 games, and since those games, he's been really poor. He started all 3 of the last league games, I believe, and I did a piece on this earlier. Compared to the 20 games before the last 3, shots are down, shots on target are down, shot conversion is down, the number of shots Arsenal are facing is up, pass volume is down, pass accuracy is down, touches in the opponent's box is down, and final third dispossessions for Arsenal is down. So,
wow, that good.
Yeah, compared to the 20, that good. Yeah, compared to the 20 that went before it. So there's so many players I'm struggling to kind of work out. And Ødegaard's a big one. Jesus and Gyökeres more so.
Can I focus on one thing on Ødegaard? Which
yeah.
It'll be interesting. I haven't looked at this, but basically on the duels, it really struck me that basically Ødegaard looks still as if I think he's lacking a bit of confidence in his physical output. By which I mean
getting injured, do you mean?
Yeah. So by which I mean going into, really tough tackles and sort of kind of, into physical confrontations and battles and duels, really. And it would be interesting to see on the sort of kind of the duel front on that. I look, he has suffered, from ankle, knee, and it was obviously been sort of kind of beset by a shoulder issue as well. I think Ødegaard, and a lot of people sort of say when Saka plays well, Arsenal play well. I think when Ødegaard plays well, Arsenal play well. And I just wonder whether Ødegaard at moments, because I thought he had a real purple patch, and then his last couple of weeks he's dropped off, and he certainly wasn't great. You could say that about a few people, but Ødegaard is so important to that team as a captain, as a leader of the press, if you like. Also, but I just feel as if, I wonder whether he's got complete faith in his physical self.
Yeah.
And never
people have questioned his
moment
captaincy recently.
I don't like that. I think that's nonsense. I think that basically it takes all sorts, basically, and it's really interesting me that, and know the obvious one, and sort of kind of you get loud people on sort of kind of social media going, "Oh, it should be Declan Rice or whatever." Well, Declan Rice doesn't even get the captaincy before Gabriel or Bukayo Saka, so don't necessarily pick on that. I think Ødegaard is a good leader and sets the tone on the pitch when he's playing well. But the worry for me is when he's not playing well, then all of a sudden his captaincy looks a bit, in question and in doubt. And I think that's a concern. It has to be. I think Ødegaard is when he's on song, is right up there with the best of his type in the league. But, and he also sets the tone and what have you. But I don't like that. I think, honestly, if people think that stripping someone of the captaincy midway through the season is going to help the team, you got to be joking me. I mean, honestly.
I always have conversations with people about this whenever anyone ever suggests it. I'm like, can you name for me once with a team that was sitting clear at the top of the table into the League Cup semi-final, into the FA Cup 4th rounds, say in the past, top of their Champions League group and already comfortably through to the last 16 of that competition, decided to strip their captaincy away from that player? Ever happening? No. Has that ever happened? Is that a sign of a big team? Because it's never happened. So I don't know what examples being given of that. Because
it's nonsense, isn't it? The only time I can really remember, I mean, wasn't Gallas stripped to the captaincy once?
But I mean, Arsenal were.
But it was a disciplinary issue. It was, you just don't do it. Totally. I actually think that. I think that famously I think someone else got the captaincy over Gilberto because Gilberto was deemed as a bit quiet. But again, I repeat, I'm pretty sure that wasn't mid-season or mid-action when Arsenal were deemed to be struggling, let alone being 4 points clear at the top. So it's just a nonsense, really, to me, in my view.
Yeah, I forgot about the Gallas one. That was a great story.
It really was. Honestly, I can remember that one so clearly.
Yeah,
chasing because over whether he would keep the captaincy the next day. And I think we got there in the end, but my word, it was took quite a few phone calls and quite a lot of digging at that time. But basically, because it was a classic one of those where the manager basically says, "Well, turn up tomorrow and you'll see." And basically, so it was down to people to use their wherewithal.
And again, that was a scenario where there is obviously an outspoken controversy, and on that thread as well. I think maybe Saka did, but Odegaard came and spoke to the media yesterday after. Which is what a captain should do.
Yeah, absolutely. I raised this before, didn't I? And I excuse me here for just rather annoyingly looking at my phone, but I just thought it's worth mentioning that basically just sort of what Odegaard said, because
I've got the quotes here if you want me to read them.
Yeah, do. And I was just going to sort of kind of pick on 2 or 3 because I really liked, basically the ones that sort of kind of stood out to me were, still kind of we're still in a good position. Let's be in the moment, bounce back and be together now. That's what we're going to do. Basically, he was saying that, does the fear factor play? And so basically, it obviously is a factor, but it can be a good factor as well. It gives you more fuel, more hunger and determination. It's time to be together now. We are still top of the league and we'll still keep pushing each other and be together now. I like that. I think it's so important for the captain of a team to stand forward and sort of say, this is the message. This is the message in the dressing room. This is the message from the players and from the squad. We're 4 points clear. We're top of the league. We back ourselves. Don't lose heart in this, and basically we keep going. We stick together. I think it's a powerful message. And I don't think that sometimes, Arsenal use the media enough to sometimes get that message across. I don't know whether it's, the players being a bit reluctant to speak or whatever, but Odegaard stepping forward, making that point, I thought was really, really strong, because it is worth reminding. Because if you listen to the negativity and all the outside noise, it's like Arsenal having a wobble. Arsenal have blown the title. You're probably listening to me, aren't you? But basically,
what's your prediction for Leeds? 5-0 defeat.
Well, I know, I did sort of say I think Arsenal might slip up against United. I didn't think they'd lose. To be honest. Yeah. But then again, even the clock's twice, right twice a day. It's been a frustrating spell, and I think that basically it's important to address that message and then basically get that across. It also, I think, sort of really gets that message across that you are the captain, you are in charge. And I think it was really good. I think the one that speaks after every game, it's become a bit of a standing joke whenever you cover them, is Virgil van Dijk for Liverpool. But fair play to him. And how do I perceive Virgil van Dijk? I perceive him as a strong, determined, defiant, great captain and one of the best defenders of the Premier League era. Speak a bit more, get your voice out there, and I think that's how you perceive. People say, it doesn't matter, it's just kind of, talking to the press or whatever. I'm sorry. I totally disagree with that. I think your perception of the way we view people is such an important factor, and the way that they stand on the pitch and the stature in which they're held. And I think that message could be, clear. And so it was really good to see Odegaard. It was our colleague Ryan Taylor, wasn't it, who kind of was in amongst the sort of kind of quiz masters, if you like, sort of kind of speaking to him after the game. It was really good, kind of defiant, strong message, I think.
Yeah, it's really important, and it's not something that gets said, it's always because you want to see players standing out up the front on the pitch, making those big, and his form's not great at the moment, but if you want to talk about what a captain does, that's what a captain does. They come out and speak after a really poor result. They set the record straight and they get behind their teammates and they say that they're going to use it as fuel to move forwards. And he said he did himself absolutely no disservice in what he said yesterday, and I thought he spoke really well. We'll hear from another Arsenal player on Tuesday, tomorrow, in fact, ahead of the game against Kairat. Of course, you'll be able to get the updates from that pre-match press conference. I'm aware of who it is. I just don't think I can tell people yet. But it's I'll give you a clue. It's someone who's not really been playing much, so it could be quite interesting to hear what they've got to say about that and more. Let's talk about the reaction, John, because I think there's two aspects to this, and I wrote my morning talking points basically centered around this idea that I think Arsenal needs the Emirates more than ever now. From here into the end of the season, I don't think there's a time where this team needs those men and women in that ground to really get behind them and support them through what is obviously at the moment a difficult period, which will hopefully end in the dream goal that we've all been so patient and excited for many, many seasons. At full time yesterday, there were, to some, and I think some said that they didn't notice it. Others have said they have noticed it. I noticed it. I know that friends of mine didn't and other friends did. There were boos from certain sections of the stadium toward the players and for their performance. And during the game as well, there were quite audible groans and moans when misplaced passes were made, when poor touches were made on every occasion, pretty much. Every time there was something that didn't go quite right, there was groans. If Arsenal were slow on a throw-in, there were big shouts to hurry up. And, I think there's something in that, to be fair. And Arsenal probably should hurry up their throw-ins. But there was a sense of agitation. I've talked about nerves before, John, and I think that exists as well. But it seems there's agitation as well within the fan base at the moment.
Yeah. Look, I'll be perfectly honest and hold my hands up here. I didn't hear those boos at full-time whistle. Otherwise, I clearly would have written about them. It's not kind of, sort of. So I do think it's a mix, and it still probably plays into the fact how loud it was and stuff. But I tell you, the bigger thing for me was during the game, I felt those jitters and those nerves again. It's always interesting where I sit, because I sit on the edge of the press box, basically on the end row, on the end seat.
Yeah, I was only 2 seats away from you yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. I mean, listen, there's some guys opposite the sort of kind of the walkway who I really engage with, and we have a bit of a laugh, and it's good fun. And so I'm so grateful that I sit there, and it kind of the same people flow past. They're always good to see people and sort of say hello and what have you. But on occasion, you do get, I think I mentioned this guy goes, well, where's your nerves now after the kind of, I don't know, was it the Villa game? And he basically came back 10 minutes later. It wasn't a half time or anything like that. 10 minutes later and apologised. So don't be daft, because he thought maybe I was giving him some sticks. So yeah. I think that he was giving me some sticks rather. But it was just... I think it's been a thing and it's been a factor this season, much more than last. I think if we go back to Arsenal's first real title challenge under Arteta, what was that, 22-23? One of the best things about that season was the way that the fans re-engaged, if you like, and Arteta was so much, so responsible for that. Brilliant. And basically, there's a feel-good factor. Everyone's behind the team, and everyone was saying who hadn't, doesn't come to the Emirates very often, said, "Oh my word, what's happened to this place? It's got an atmosphere. Yeah. The crowd's on board." And I think the problem is that was an unexpected title challenge, and now they are expected to win, especially when you're 7 points clear. And if you then wobble, it's oh god, it's happening again, basically. And so that it's that mood, isn't it? And that's what I felt yesterday. I really did. I thought it was a worry. I still think that negative, that jittery kind of atmosphere and those nerves are the biggest single worry and concern, I think. The away fans are something else and great. And please don't get me wrong. I don't think the Emirates is completely overwhelmed by people, being negative or whatever. But there is an expectancy within the crowd, and rightly so. Basically spent a lot of money. They've been, improving year on year. And I think they're basically now they're in a position where, I didn't hear it, Tom. I mean, you explained, but the one thing I would say is that basically, if there was booing, I'm not really doubting that you heard it, so fair play. But I personally would have thought that rather than against the players, it was a bit more frustration against the result. Someone I've known for years and years, she's lovely, came past, and we've sort of kind of seen her at so many games and down the years, and she was bemoaning the fact that Arsenal and Arteta had made 4 substitutions in one go. And personally, I completely agreed with that with her. And basically, she made a great point, and that basically completely destabilizes the team. You're starting again, and it took about 10 minutes for that, for the team to kind of find itself.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you haven't got that luxury. And I thought, listen, I'm sure he wouldn't want to do that, Arteta. But basically, by making 4 subs in one go, my word, you're completely disrupting it. And that was probably a reflection of his frustration. And so I'm sure he wouldn't want to do it. But I actually thought it was a really bad move and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And basically, 84 minutes, you'd say, okay, it's borne out. And basically, you got what you tried to do. But then if you lose, well, actually, it didn't work in the grand scheme of things. It didn't work, did it, to be honest? So I can sense the frustration, definitely.
Yeah, I found the changes themselves, like if you look at that, none of them change anything really. They're personnel changes. They're not tactical changes. They're not shifts. Timber goes to left, Ben White goes to the right, and Gapier comes off. You've got Zubimendi being replaced, and then Rice moving to a 6, which you can play, and Merino playing left 8. So that doesn't really change anything other than just kind of personnel. Eza comes on from Ødegaard. That's a like for like change. And Gyökeres comes on for Jesus, which is another like for like change. And then later on in the game, you bring off Trossard from Madueke. Saka moves to the left. Another like for like change. You've not changed the structure of the team in any way. And I felt as though towards the end of the game, when you're chasing that victory, I would have taken Timber off for Madueke, and I would have gone to a back 3, because a draw is no good for Arsenal, really, in that situation. The gap's been closed. They need to keep that 7-point gap. They need to go for the win. They've conceded. United are vulnerable, and they've shown that they can be scored on against. And I would have gone for the extra attacker. I would have gone Arsene Wenger, old age days of where he just throw on every attacker and look to be more offensive and to try and nick a goal. And we didn't. Everything was like for like. And it was just kind of like, it was almost like you were hooking players, not happy with their performances and thinking of the guy that's going to come on to replace them is going to do better. And then they don't. But you've not changed anything structurally, so that the ideas are exactly the same. And so, I thought Arteta mismanaged how he made those changes as well. So I agree with you. Just on the, just on kind of the booze and sort of thing, as you said, I did hear them at full time, and I was frustrated throughout the game with kind of how the players were kind of, the energy was exacerbating the nervousness we saw, I think, on the pitch during the game. And I just feel as though that, I asked Arteta afterwards in the press conference about his thoughts. He said he's not thinking about that. Clearly, they need to do more. Obviously, everyone's got the energy. Everyone wants Arsenal to win the league and do well. But I can't help but myself feel, looking at that and going, that feels incredibly entitled, in my opinion. If your team is 4 points clear at the top of the table, that's the first time you've seen your team lose at home all season in any game at home at the Emirates. And when the first time that they lose, they get booed. Like, I have to question what the mindset is there. And I know that we've been kind of leading up to this point, and I know that there have been some games when we've been unhappy with the performances against Liverpool and at Forest, but I struggle with that. I struggle with that mindset, or just kind of putting myself in that person's shoes to think, I think what I'm going to do at the end of this game is boo. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. No, totally. I don't like it. I never quite understand it. I do subscribe to the overall arching view that basically you pays your money, you takes your choice. Of course, fans are entitled to do it. It's just not something that I personally subscribe to. I just couldn't imagine myself kind of as a fan, and I was a fan one day of football. Basically, I was. I promise you, before I started writing. And now I don't claim to be a fan. I really don't. No matter, but I do feel strongly that I don't know that. I can remember sort of kind of getting frustrated with one player in the past, and and that was it. And I always remember sort of kind of someone in the crowd saying, well, what good is that going to do? But I would never stand, and they were right, and I never booed again. And basically, but I've never, ever at the end of a game thought I'm going to, I think there's been issues, I think, down the years when you kind of have a sort of kind of vote, voice your frustration with, I don't know, the hierarchy or the manager and that, but to boo the performance and the team, it's just not in my mindset. And I also think that basically, I can't believe you're absolutely right that issue now is 4 points clear. And yes, it is a blow, and yes, they were miles off their best, miles off it. But then basically, come on, it's been it's been a decent season. The other crazy stat, which you referred to and alluded to earlier, it's the first time they've conceded 3 since Luton in December 2023.
League One now, Luton. Yeah.
Ridiculous. And they won that game. But I mean, it's absolutely bonkers. So basically, they've come a long way. Someone posted about sort of kind of Chelsea's record, of not conceding many goals is, what is it, 16 in a season, isn't it?
Yeah, 15.
Basically, is now safe. And basically, I mean, again, okay, that record is gone. But we're past how many games in the Premier League? 23.
23.
And then basically, I mean,
it was never going to be on. It
was never really going to be on. But
you can't talk about that until you're like you've conceded 8 in January. Like that's when you can start talking about it. That wasn't the case. But that happens.
So I don't get it. And then also it gives fuel, I think, to basically to kind of, people to knock the team, the fan base, and everything really, which I think is such a shame. Because the other thing that I'd sort of kind of written a couple of pieces to that, but the other thing that I think is that I think it's so noticeable that I think a lot of neutrals really enjoyed and wanted to see Arsenal win the title when they first emerged as unlikely title contenders. You spend a lot of money, and then basically, sometimes Arteta can kind of be painted as this, rather arrogant figure. I don't think he is that, actually.
No, I think he can be stubborn, but I wouldn't call him arrogant.
No, I agree with you. But I think then basically, the kind of the green-eyed monster sort of jealousy pops up, and then all of a sudden, a lot of people want and are waiting for Arsenal to fail. And then basically, me, I'm always going on about this on basically various kind of fan accounts and what have you on social media. When sort of kind of loads of them do their predictions and they all expect Arsenal to win 6-0 away from home and they're all doing it. I just think how arrogant and, entitled does that make Arsenal fans look? It really troubles me because I shouldn't be like that. But you know what I mean? And it's just a bit, come on, Arsenal is still desperate to get over that line and win their first, major trophy under Arteta, barring the sort of the FA Cup 2020. And I think that, they've got to accept that there's still a team trying to get there and they haven't got there yet. And there's a big difference between that.
Yeah, look, I do want to say as well, this is not me saying that you're not allowed to boo. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm just disagreeing with the headspace to get into in that position where Arsenal are right now and thinking that this is the appropriate time to do that.
Yeah,
I think there are appropriate times where booing can show rightfully the frustrations. I friends of mine who support teams further down the table that have seen their club make horrendous decisions that have left them absolutely in awful situations. I think the way that Manchester United has been run in recent seasons and recent years since the exit of Sir Alex Ferguson, absolutely would constitute you booing
West Ham. West
Ham's a great example.
The West Ham fans, I keep on about this. Honestly, that fan base has been through so much. And then basically, do I begrudge West Ham saying we want to play a certain way? Do I begrudge them basically saying, actually we want change at the top? Fantastic supporters who basically, really make their voices heard. And if they have to, they'll protest and they'll boo. Does it affect the players during the game? I mean, I have to say, Arsenal a few years back, I felt as if the poisonous, toxic atmosphere in the 90 minutes was really derailing performances.
Yeah.
And if you are going to boo, do it at 90. But I feel as if, it's really dangerous because I think all of a sudden you're not far off actually making the players a little bit fearful when they actually expect the home fans to really get behind them and provide some extra energy.
I just want this team to have the best possible environment to go on and win it. And I feel as though that isn't the case right now because, and I get it, because people are nervous and they're tired and impatient. And, the fear of what's happened in these previous seasons and the signs that we've seen this season are concerning. Last thing I want to say, John, before we move on to just looking a little bit ahead in the final few moments of the pod, is that, and I was asked this morning on TalkSport, actually, and I was asked, if Arsenal win the league this season, are they the worst team to win the league? Which I thought was such a horrendously insulting question.
Who asked you that?
I don't know. It's not. It's not one of their kind of regular presenters. It's just someone who I think is just looking for kind of a clip content sort of thing. But it was like in this post-match analysis with Man United fan, just having a chat about it. Yeah, he said, "Is this?" And I said, "No." Like, I was like, "Look, the Premier League in terms of entertainment, is not the same Premier League that it was, and no one can, in my opinion, it's not really too much debate. Like back in the 2000s." We had some amazing games and it was a spectacle and you had these brilliant players. I think overall, probably the quality of players in football in general is not the same as it was 20 years ago. But that's because I think the game is evolved into a much more tactical, analytical thing. And that there's so much money involved that clubs are willing to pay huge amounts of money to get these tiny little marginal gains and to try and find the way of winning things or not losing in the case of teams further down the league. And that has had a detrimental impact on the quality of the game that we see before us. And so Arsenal won't be the worst team to win the Premier League. They might be one of the winners of one of the worst states of the Premier League that we've. And I'm not talking about kind of like the rest of the team is the rest of the league is really bad, so Arsenal were just the best team. I'm not saying it in that sense. What I'm saying is that I think Arsenal and Arteta have worked out, and Thierry Henry spoke about this the other day, have worked out that to win this current iteration of the Premier League, this is how you do it. This is how you're going to get the most wins. This is how you're going to get the most points. And it's not by playing free-flowing, beautiful passing football. It's by being industrious and gritty and hard to beat and being able to crack teams open with things like set pieces and dead ball situations when open play foregoes you. And that's what it'll be. It won't be the case of we're the worst team to win the league. It's just, for me, we're just the best team for this iteration of the Premier League.
Yeah, I do agree with you in so many ways. The one accusation I keep hearing, actually referred to this as well, is that basically if Arsenal win it, they'll have won it by default because everyone else is rubbish. I mean, please, the other thing is that basically Arsenal have easily got the best squad. I actually disagree with that. I tell you for why. I feel as if Arsenal have arguably the deepest and strongest squad. But does that make it the best squad? I would argue at this point in time, the best squad is probably Man City because they have an experience and a winning mentality and sort of kind of experience.
With Liverpool second, I'd say.
Absolutely, yeah. The way that Arsenal can change that is basically winning with this squad.
Yeah.
And basically, all of a sudden, if you then get crowned champions, of course, you automatically, in my view, become the best squad because you've proved it. And up until that point, you're saying that actually, it's not that. I mean, look, Arsenal got great depth. I mean, Timber and White at right back. I think Calafiori this season has been exceptional, and Arsenal really missed him, in the last month or so, really missed him big time. And basically, so he's obviously very close now to coming back. But Nkapé's much more of a defensive-minded warrior, rather than a sort of kind of stylish playmaker like Calafiori, who's just a glorious, wonderful player. We've seen him now, haven't we, basically, in, this season. It was frustrating last year because he was, didn't really feel as if he, brought enough to the party, largely because of injuries. But I just think this season has been absolutely exceptional, and they've really missed him. But they've got strength in depth all over the pitch. But the difference is they just haven't quite got there. So basically, they've yet to prove it and yet to kind of lift themselves again. And I think that's the difference. But I do think that it's just a nonsense to sort of say that. I think City are formidable opponents. Aston Villa are riding the crest of a wave and, doing incredibly well because I thought, blimey, lose at home to Everton, then got a trip to Istanbul and then basically followed by a trip to Newcastle. Wow, that is a test. And what do? They go and win them both. It's astonishing, testament to their resilience and strength. And so I think it's a 3-horse title race, hasn't changed. Arsenal have had chances to pull away, blown them, and basically then all of a sudden it's a big setback. And it's, but I mean, you score at Forest, you're 9 clear. Yeah. And basically then all of a sudden, even, it'd still be disappointing, if they'd lost to United. Of course it will, but,
6 points. Yeah. So, it's just, I've said this before.
Got to keep it in context.
100%.
I mean, I actually feel like you know, I think most fans, if you'd said going into, you know, approaching the end of January, if you're 4 points clear at the top, they'd have bitten your hand off.
Yeah,
absolutely bitten your hand off. But it's about now a little bit of a reset, basically, because it's, you know, they're obviously home and hosed in the Champions League. They've got to win at Leeds, and then also then they've got the Chelsea return. Now, you know, if they come through and win 3 games, wow, you know, everything is answered. If they then lose or drop points at Leeds, then all of a sudden you're going, oh God, they're not going to slip up against Chelsea, are they? You know,
massive game.
It's a defining game, really.
Yeah, it really is, because this is the first of like a run of games where you're looking at going, they should win these. Like they should beat Leeds, they should beat Sunderland, they should beat Brentford, they should beat Spurs, they should beat Chelsea, they should beat Brighton, they should beat Everton, they should beat Wolves, they should beat Bournemouth. And then
see, there you go again.
No, I know, and that's how my head works. But like, Arsenal have had such a difficult start to the season, and not to have Arsenal currently, I think, is above 80% likely still to win the league at this point, because all the teams they've got to play. Again, this is in a piece I did a little bit earlier on today that's gone out. And that's the average points per game of the opponents that remain this season. Arsenal's average points per game at the moment is, I think it's 1.37 right now. And Villa's is 1.38. So only slightly more challenging than Arsenal. And then Manchester City's is, it's 1.26 for Arsenal, 1.27 for Villa. And then Man City's is 1.38. So significantly more difficult, more challenging of the games that remain. So Arsenal have got the easiest fixtures. They've got the biggest lead over their rivals. They've got the biggest squad.
Can you rewind? What do you mean? So Arsenal were expected to take, or
no. So if you think about the points that have been accrued per game by teams across the league this season, so of all of the opponents that Arsenal have left to face, on average, those teams have picked up 1.26 points per game.
Right. Okay.
So that's the average of the teams that they have left to face. Villa's, the teams that they have to face, on average, have picked up 1.27. And then Man City's opponents have picked up 1.38 so far this season. So Arsenal picked up the most on average because they're top of the table. But when it comes to like those opponents that they've got, Arsenal have the easiest run in from here. Not only that, but an interesting stat is that outside of Champions League games that have still yet to be drawn and FA Cup games that have still yet to be drawn, Arsenal are only leaving London 4 more times. One of those is at Leeds on the weekend. So they'd only leave London 3 more times after that, between now and the end of the season. So because they've already done most of the tricky, tough away games further afield. So they've got Leeds, City, Wolves, and Brighton, the only non-London teams away from home they've got left. So it's all of it is there. It is there for Arsenal, you know. There's no doubt about that. And I personally don't think there can really be any excuse if Arsenal don't win this title. And I don't usually talk like that. I'm not the person that says that. But that is how I see the season right now. That's how I see this opportunity and how it's all set up for Arsenal. And look, I think that we've been here before where things have fallen away from Arsenal in front of our eyes. And this season's just different because we have the ability to do it. We've got the players to do it. And we currently are doing as much as is possible at this moment, it seems, for Arsenal to do it. Maybe slightly less than we would hope, but enough that it's keeping us afloat and in front of those teams that are currently chasing us. I think if they can do it, every game is a cup final. But if they can do it, it will relieve such a weight on them that the next few seasons could be really fun if they do it this time.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Completely agree. Honestly, I think that one, it'll be like a release valve, basically. Get one over the line, and my word, you know, it would be amazing, really. Yeah. And listen, I think before the last weekend, 7 points, you know, ahead, you think, well, Arsenal, you know, a lot of neutrals would say, well, Arsenal going to win the league. And that brings its own expectation and pressure. And I think it's really ramped up now. It's ratcheted up, and Arsenal got to respond to that. But basically, big mentality, big question about kind of mental strength and output. And I think, yeah, these are testing times.
100%. Quickly to look ahead, our flashbacks are a little bit different. We usually do these flashbacks where we kind of look back to specific games, and you are going to look back, John, to a game against Leeds, which is our next Premier League fixture, but there's more of a broader context to it, isn't it?
Yeah, there is actually. And I was going to go back to 99 May and the run-in, and it was a strange one, really, because I just think that sort of Arsenal did finish that season empty-handed. But I'll always remember that as it was the year after Arsenal won the double in Wenger's first full season in English football. And 99, they lose the cup final. They lose the cup semi-final replay at Villa Park to Manchester United. And I'll always believe that if Arsenal had won that game, Dennis Bergkamp scores that penalty, if you like, then basically they would have gone on to win the double. And so can you imagine that, a double-double? And basically, the reason I say that is because from there, United then go on to win the FA Cup, and Arsenal kind of, their confidence is knocked. And then, 2 or 3 games later, Arsenal go to Leeds, and they've just kind of got to make sure that they don't slip.
Yeah.
And basically, they've ended up. They do. I think Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank scores the goal. But in my mind, that will always be remembered as the Nelson Vivas game, because Nelson Vivas was a sort of Argentinian international, signed as a bit of a squad player, came on, and I think actually Nigel Winterburn broke his nose or something like that. Crazy. Oh, nutty Nigel, great bloke, great servant of the club, absolutely fabulous bloke. He's still around now, and basically Arsenal absolutely in his blood. And so committed, and probably would have played on absolutely no problem. But then basically got subbed. Vivas loses his man, and basically Leeds score. Arsenal lose. They lose it by 1 point from United, I think, and basically, but had a better goal difference. So they didn't actually. It wasn't. They just needed to avoid defeat, basically, and they've ended up losing. But really significantly, that was held up as something that Wenger did incredibly rare during his reign, where he basically publicly sort of outed one player as being at fault, for the defeat, which was Vivas. He probably actually didn't really mean to do it, but he did, and basically sort of kind of say, well, he's kind of not picking up the man, his mistake. And basically, from then on, Arsenal lose. But it raises that issue, and we were going to touch on this, weren't we, basically? Very, very rarely, if you think about it, and I know people say, oh, no, that happens all the time. It really doesn't. When a manager really kind of says, it's quite a big thing for a manager to publicly criticise an individual player. And I honestly think that was one of the very, very few times that Wenger did it publicly. But we were going to just mention that Arteta was publicly critical, wasn't he? Over Madueke.
Noni, yesterday. And it's not the first time he's done it. He did it at Liverpool as well. He did it at Anfield early in the season about Eze. And when Eze got into the box and had that chance, he publicly kind of spoke about that. But just the quote on Noni was, I think we managed to shift the energy after the changes, score the second goal, and you could feel that everything changed and the game was ready to go and win it. In the next action, Noni is 1 versus 1 in the box. We don't get anything out of that. It goes to a goal kick. They close the structure, 1 pass, win the duel, and Cunha puts it in the perfect angle to lose all momentum. All the good energy that we were building up and go to win the game for them. So, very, very disappointed. And as you talked about earlier with Eze, he had that game against Villa, makes that mistake, gets hooked. We don't see him for a while. Is that going to happen with Noni now? And he's come out and kind of publicly said, if Noni doesn't do that, we don't lose the game.
Honestly, I think when you sort of kind of put it like that, it doesn't sound that harsh when we're sort of reading it out. But I just think if you follow the team and follow what the manager says and the pattern, then actually it's still honestly quite rare, for a manager to kind of zone in on one player and a kind of, a deficiency. you know, because sometimes managers will be diplomatic about a goalkeeper if there's goalkeeper error, you know, basically. It'll sort of kind of basically say, I'm sure that, you know, he wish he could have done better or normally would do better and that sort of stuff. But basically, it's not really, you know, sort of kind of handing him his backside on a plate, if you like. But basically, it's just a little bit of a, you know, a marker. So yeah, that was my flashback really, and yeah, I really had this sense yesterday, and this was the biggest thing, that Arsenal would respond, and I just think against United, because I just didn't see them dropping points 3 games in a row, and so basically it would be unthinkable for Arsenal to drop 4 in a row. So I just think it's got to be response time at Ellen Road. And I love going to Ellen Road, by the way. What a fantastic stadium and atmosphere. People talk about it being intimidating. But I honestly think, wow, as a player, you've got to love it and enjoy the moment, really, and be inspired by that energy and noise, you know, and I think it's fabulous, absolutely fabulous place to play football.
Yeah, look, well, they got a really good result against Liverpool early in the season when they drew 3-3. Man City still have to go there this season as well, which obviously is going to be a tricky game for them. And I think back to 2004. You know, I know it's not like that point of the season when we got knocked out of the Champions League to Chelsea, knocked out the FA Cup by Manchester United. We then had Liverpool at home, and going into the break at half time, behind, I think, because of Michael Owen, if memory serves me correctly. That second half performance from Thierry Henry, then we went on to win the game 4-2, was just such a kind of a player taking responsibility, the game by the scruff of the neck, and saying, "I'm not letting this happen. I'm not having this. We're winning this title, and we are going invincible this season, and there's nothing else anyone can say about it." I just want to see on Saturday at Leeds. It's away from the Emirates, so you haven't got kind of that noise at the moment. If anything, it's kind of nice to have the Chirac game on Wednesday, because there's a nothing game. You can kind of build up some momentum, relieve that pressure a little bit, get a nice victory, finish top of the Champions League phase, and play some players that have not had some minutes as well in the process. Go into that game against Leeds. And I just want to see someone. I really hope it's someone like Ødegaard. Obviously, I really want it to be someone like him who, at the moment, is under a bit of scrutiny. I'd love it to be Victor Gyökeres, you know, who would prove both of us very wrong if he was to do that. I want someone to just grab that. I'd love it to be Bukayo, of course, as well. And I think that, you know, having not scored and he's now getting a bit of pressure. I think I've seen some discussions saying, should Harvey Barnes be taking his place in the England squad and stuff like this? Just load of rubbish like this, basically. But I'd love for someone like Saka, like Ødegaard, like Gyökeres, just a senior figure in the team, grab the game by the scruff of the neck and say, "I'm not having this anymore. Go and win that game." And that's what I want to see. And it harks back to that Thierry Henry performance, certainly. So
yeah. He was an amazing sort of kind of leader and inspiration, Thierry, wasn't he?
He was there yesterday.
Yeah, I saw.
Look happy.
No, I was obviously in the press box in the stands. So basically, but then you know, you got that closed circuit TV on the sort of kind of the desk, and I couldn't ignore the fact that Arsenal, you know, the cameras kept on zoning in on Thierry way up and sort of kind of albeit in the posh seats, but basically was, you know, sort of looking down in utter glum. Yeah. And basically, you know, thinking, wow, what a leader. And I'm sure they were saying in commentary, blimey, you know, how it would have been different with him. And it's now time for this generation to kind of step up and make themselves club legends by basically sort of kind of bucking the trend and sort of kind of trying to go and win this title, starting with a win at Leeds on Saturday.
I have one more question for you, John, on today's show, and that is that this is our last show before deadline day. Are you expecting any surprises?
No, I'm not really. Certainly not Arsenal-wise. Well, having said that, Noiri surprised me last week.
Yes, yeah.
And I do feel as if that's an interesting move, you know, and obviously makes a big impact on his you know, debut, and that's great. So I guess you can never say never, but I personally would be surprised at this point if you're letting players go out because the squad, it feels bloated, where they're going to go, basically. There's been a little bit of talk about sort of deeper midfielder, but then you think, like, what about Norgard? You know, basically. So I'd be ever so surprised at this point. that there's been a lot of talk, isn't there, over Alvarez, for the summer. Which would be one hell of an upgrade. But basically, so I think Arsenal will be keeping their powder dry. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, the only thing I would expect maybe is some kind of younger, if they're still looking at the younger squad. But I mean, Per Mertesacker is leaving at the end of this season. They've not yet sorted out a replacement at the moment. So like we saw in January of kind of 2025 when Edu wasn't here and Joe Alberto hadn't joined yet and Jason Ato was in the interim, nothing really happened in the senior window. So I'm not really expecting anything major to happen at the academy level. We might look at somebody or a couple of players still, but it may get deferred to the summer when there's more of an idea about who's going to be in place in that role at the head of the academy. So yeah, I'd be surprised if anything happens. But like you, I was surprised about when it really didn't look like the club were entertaining that idea, and now they've entertained it, and he's gone and scored on his debut. So happy days. Could have done with a goal like that on Sundays. The easier,
it was great, didn't it? To be honest, and all of a sudden you think, wow, that's not a bad move, is it? Basically, imagine going to South France, for 6 months. Amazing. Wow, what an opportunity.
Brilliant. Well, William Saliba did excellently there and came back and has been a hell of a player for Arsenal. So maybe the same can be said for Nwaneri. John, thank you so much for your time, mate. What can people expect to look out for this week from yourself?
Oh, yeah, no, I'm going to the game Wednesday. That'll be interesting. Arsenal in the Champions League. And yeah, I've written a couple of opinions, basically, sort of kind of, sort of Arsenal and sort of the big debate, or Arsenal still on for the title, and also just, my opinion piece was kind of not now or never, but they're basically kind of this is the opportunity. So for Arsenal, they've got to step up. And the big thing for me is the kind of that accusation from Patrick Vieira on Sky that basically where's the leaders? Well, actually, you've kind of got to establish that stature and sort of kind of position, but by winning. So I think that's the most important thing. So I've done have a look out for that.
100%. Thank you so much for your time, mate.
And what about you?
Well, if you want to go check out that kind of piece on the idea of what's changed in these last 3 games compared to the 20 that preceded it, there's some really good stats backed by Opta in that. And we'll have a roundup of what we're expecting, kind of more detailed about the transfer window. And then we'll be looking ahead to that game against Kairat and Leeds as well. So, yeah, plenty to come. I did do a piece giving my thoughts about kind of the booing and the noise around the stadium. It's obviously been received extremely well, and nobody's got a problem with it, which is wonderful, which is always nice. But that's part of the game. So we absolutely love it. But thank you, John, for your time, mate. Appreciate it as always.
No, great to see you.
Always. We'll be back, of course, next Monday. We'll be breaking down that game against Leeds and a little bit more reaction, of course, in the week building up to that second leg against Chelsea, or Arsenal, believe it or not. It doesn't feel like it, but could be in a cup final very soon. We will see. Stay safe, stay well, and as always, keep seeing red.